We're quite in between two cities as well, Liverpool and Manchester. So yeah, and in a way that sort of makes us slightly cosmopolitan of the north, if you like. We've got a good sort of mix of people. Yeah, and I think that's what makes us special as well. I'm just fed up. I'm fed up. I meet a lot of people. Most of my friends are from Wigan. Pretty much all of them, to be honest. And some of them are sort of new friends over the last 10 years, and we're all sort of singing from the same hymn sheet. The people who are a little bit older than me, the people who are younger than me, the people who are the same age as me, we're all sort of saying the same thing. We're all fed up of the Labour Party that doesn't represent us anymore. And Wigan's never been a conservative voting town either. So, what's our options right now? So I suppose what brought me here is listening to other people, but also being part of a campaign group for the last 16 years. So I've been sort of going back and forth to Parliament, arguing with MPs and trying to make a difference in the justice world. And I've seen how difficult it is. And I've also seen how lazy some MPs are. And I just thought, you know what, if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't be half as lazy. And saying that, there are some really good MPs, regardless, cross-party MPs as well. I could name if I had to, but the majority of them try to sort of ignore any major issue that doesn't sound politically fancy or sexy, if you like. Most MPs choose a subject and an issue that seems to be easy for them and seems to be one that most people sort of gravitate to. But I'm more interested in the difficult choices, the ones that affect people in a more difficult way, and the people that struggle the most, and the people who struggle the most are the ones whose voices need to be heard the most. So I think I've cut my teeth in fighting, if you like, and campaigning and struggle. So I just think if there's anyone in Wigan who's got a real struggle and they want a real fight, then I'm probably the best candidate for them. I think there's two big challenges for Wigan at the moment. I think the NHS. We've got an elderly population in Wigan, and lots of people who need to be taken care of in their old age. They've worked all their lives, they've paid taxes, and I've recently discovered that the care homes that people are being put into, they're being put in there, they're being accepted, and then they're being thrust upon them these huge bills that many of them never expected would accumulate. And that is also being sort of passed on to their family members. So until you're in that position, you don't realise the care that you would think that you could have towards the end of your life is still only available if you're wealthy enough to pay for it. And the NHS definitely, like I said, I was born at home, not in the hospital, but that was with home care from NHS doctors and midwives. And because the care was so good, my mum had the choice to do that. I'm not quite sure if young women in Wigan have that choice anymore. That was a wonderful choice for my mum. She wanted to have all of her children at home, and she had 3 out of the 4. And that made her very happy. And all of us were born healthy and well looked after. And without an NHS that is funded and is able to do that, those kind of choices are taken away from women in the future. And the NHS is definitely worth saving. It's looked after me for all my life. Why shouldn't it look after my children and my grandchildren and everyone else's? I think it's in a very precarious position, whoever stands it is going to be put in at the moment, whether that's Conservative or Labour or even Lib Dem. I cannot see anyone arguing the right argument for the NHS. And I think that's why it's important to get the independents in there, because we're not doing the party line, we're doing what the people of whatever constituents we represent, what they want. So if Wigan wants a fully funded NHS from cradle to grave, if I am chosen and elected to be their MP, that is what I will fight for. And I'll fight that against either Labour or the Tories. And without independence in Westminster, there is no fight, because I don't think either political party have got an appetite to save the NHS and to have it as it was intended. It was intended for all of us, and it was intended to be free for all of us. And you only have to look at the dentist. I can't find an NHS dentist, and I think pretty much most people in this town can't either. And if the dentists are something to sort of look at and think, hold on a minute, is that going to be a doctor's surgery soon? Are we going to have that two-tier service? You can go to a dentist, but it's in an emergency, and you have your teeth removed rather than taken care of. So I just fear that this two-tier NHS service, this slightly private, slightly not, as they're arguing to us, is going to leave people going in, having to have something done to them, and it'll be sort of an emergency surgery rather than a fixing you completely, as it is with the dentist. And I find that quite scary, quite scary. I think at the moment, Wigan's a very safe Labour seat, and it always has been. So we have Lisa Nandy. I think when Lisa Nandy sort of came to Wigan and started to, as a new MP and quite a young MP, I think she did have the credentials for Wigan. I think she was a socialist, but I think over the years, I think that socialist ethos that we all hoped she would keep and it would remain has disappeared. It's become more of the Labour Party line as opposed to what the people of Wigan want her to do. And that's really sad, because as a Labour town, with lots of working class people who are very proud of their working class heritage and very proud of being members of the Labour Party, feel like they've been taken for granted and let down massively over the last 2-3 decades. And that's not completely Lisa Nandy's fault, because she's only been here for a certain amount of time. But I think in general, the Labour Party has let everyone down over the last 2 or 3 decades. I would hope so. I think you only need to look at things on social media and on television. People in Wigan are as close to social media and television as anyone else in the entire country. So nobody can see that. Nobody can see that and say that this is okay. Nobody. I can't speak for everyone who sits in their home at night and looks at this stuff, but we're a town full of amazing people, and I cannot see that anyone in this town would condone that at all. But I'm about to go out onto the streets and find out over the next couple of weeks. But I do know people who have gone to Manchester and Liverpool and joined in the marches. And there are people, some of these people who are already going to these marches. The people who've been going and doing these marches for many, many years. I've been on some of them myself over the last 10 years or so. So this isn't new. I think the genocide is new, but the support for Palestine certainly isn't new. It's something that I've known about for a long time. So as I've known about it, quite a lot of other people have known about it, but we just haven't been involved. I think we need to stop selling bombs and guns and arms to other countries. We've always been a country that has industry. Is the only industry we have right now, is it making bombs and arms to sell to other countries so that they can kill other people in other countries? I find that quite disturbing. People have got skills. We don't have to use those skills to create weapons that kill people in other countries. Let's use those skills and transfer them into another industry, one that means that we are a country of peace rather than a country that supports war, and at the moment a country that supports genocide. It's it is beyond me. It is beyond me. And I do understand that people have got jobs and they may think that these jobs are for life, and it's what they have to do in order to support their own livelihood. But if these jobs are there and they are skilled jobs, transfer them into another industry. They will have skills. They don't have to be the skills that make weapons to kill other people. You see, I went to a meeting about a year ago, and in the meeting there was someone from Ukraine and someone from Russia, and I had to sit because I don't know. I really don't understand the politics of other countries, and I don't understand why the UK has to be involved in the politics of other countries. You know, we're not at war with Russia, and we're not at war with Ukraine, and I cannot understand why we have to be involved in everything that goes on across the world. And to interfere. But I sat in that room and I listened to the words of the person from the Ukraine and one from Russia, and both of them, I mean, they got on great with each other because they were two human beings in a room giving their opinions. And both of them said, unless you're from that country and you are living in that country, you don't know the whole of it. So your decisions in England, because it was a room full of English people listening, you know, to two sides of this war, and both of them said, the British media is not giving you the whole truth, so we cannot make an opinion unless we know everything. So I find it really, I have no idea because I don't have all the information. But what I do think is that as a nation, we should stop interfering in other people's war. And sometimes I think these wars are orchestrated for other reasons. And of course, you know, whether people believe me or not, we don't have a war. We don't have a weapons industry, do we? Take away the weapons industry and we can take away the wars, can't we? Well, we all have a right to vote, and you can't moan about what happens next if you haven't taken part in that. And I think, you know, I do understand that people will be a little bit scared of trying to vote for an independent because there is no party behind me. And there is nothing sort of solid, like at least with the Labour Party, that people think that there's a membership and it's a sort of large membership from across the country. And what I would say is, you know, if we get Labour in power, there does have to be some independents in there in order to argue and make sure that they're made accountable for all of the promises that they've made for us. You know, both parties continually make promises before an election, and then as soon as the election, you know, chooses whoever is to be the next government, all of those promises disappear. And we need independents like me to go in there and to make sure that those promises are kept. And to fight for the people the constituents, the people who vote for it. I think every MP should fight for the person that voted for them, and not have to sort of go to the big boss at Westminster and completely change all of their promises because they don't want to keep them anymore. And I think if people in Wigan voted for me, obviously I'm not going to become the Prime Minister, you know, and I'm not going to be making any of the big decisions, but I can be making all of the arguments on behalf of people. I can be demanding that people in Wigan get a fair chance and they get the opportunity to have a voice and not just be caught up in that sort of political machine that doesn't listen to anyone. I think for Wigan personally, people need to have somewhere to live, affordable homes. We need some council houses and they need to be built because there hasn't been any built for a very long time. And there's a sort of demographic of young people in Wigan right now, sort of, I don't know, late 20s, 30s, up to the sort of 45, I'd say 30 to 45-year-olds are sort of living in private rented accommodation that is incredibly expensive. They can't get a mortgage, but yet their rent is more expensive than if they had a mortgage, and they're living precariously. And many of them have got children and they want that stability. And the only way that they could get an affordable home and get that stability of a family life would be if they had a council house. So if we build council houses, you know, instead of selling off the brown belt and green belt to sort of private building firms and building 5-bedroomed houses on the edge of Wigan, which is what is happening right now. You know, there's all these huge estates with big fancy houses that no one can afford being built. You know, what about the people of Wigan? What about these young families who've been living in private rented accommodation that they can't afford, living hand to mouth and losing the opportunity of a lot of choices? They need somewhere stable to live and to know that they can live there without a landlord coming in and saying, right, you've got to be gone by the end of the month. And especially when people have got children, if you've got young children, you need to know that you're in a safe place and that you and your children are safe in that home. And education as well. I went to university. I didn't pay any university fees, and I didn't have any loans when I came out. That was it was huge for me. And to think that young people right now who do make that choice are coming out of university with some of them are coming out of with debts that are bigger than the mortgage I had for my house 25 years ago. It's terrifying. My children couldn't go to university because I wouldn't want them to come out with debts. But one of the things I found as well, and this is really important to recognise, I've met some young people that have gone to university and they've got quite nice jobs, good jobs, the jobs that they wanted. But because of the pay scale that they're on, if they get a pay rise, they're denying themselves the pay rise, because if they go up to a certain pay scale, they have to pay off their student loan, which leaves them worse off than before they got a pay rise. So they have these incredible skills that came about by going to university, but they are leaving themselves on a lower pay scale because they're worse off once they start to pay back the student debt. That's almost like drawing people into an industry where you never need to pay them, their worth. And that as well, I think we're going to see more of that as time goes on, because young people don't go to university understanding that this is what's going to happen to them once they leave. Of course we can. Of course we can afford it. Of course we can. We're the sixth richest nation in the universe. Let's stop pretending that this country hasn't got any money. There's more money here than, it's just that we don't know where it is. Tax the 1%. There is money in this country. There's more than enough money to build council houses. There's more than enough money to make sure the NHS is functioning properly. There's more than enough money for students. If people are intelligent enough and they pass the grades that they need and they want to go to university, then they should be allowed to, and they shouldn't come out of it with debt. I mean, if you think about it, if someone goes to university and they, what they can put back into this country is amazing, and it's stopping them from doing that. Yeah, we're the sixth richest country in the world. Seriously, if we keep saying that we can't afford it and we have to tighten our belts and austerity here, there, and everywhere, people are lying to us. Every government is lying to us. Of course, we're not. It's every government wants the profit from our labour. They want us to work until we die, and they want to profit from our work until we die without ever giving us anything back. They don't want to give us our healthcare back. They don't want to educate our children. They don't want to build houses for us. It's almost like a form of slavery towards all of us. You work until you die and you're getting nothing back because the country's too poor. Of course it isn't too poor. But this, like I said, we're the sixth richest country in the world. Have you seen how small we are? Other nations can do these things and they don't have the wealth that we have. So, where have they put our money? That needs to be the big question. Where have you put our money that we no longer have any? And I don't believe it, and I won't believe that we can't afford any of these things. And I definitely won't believe that, and because it's a nonsense. The whole sort of principles of the For the Many network are just common sense. Nobody's asking for anything grand or unusual, just the basic needs that people should be having. All the things that I had as a child. I don't want sewage going into the rivers, honestly, it just feels as if the whole of this country has gone so far backwards, it's hardly recognisable. I mean, in Wigan itself, I can hardly recognise the town centre anymore. It used to be a really thriving shopping centre and a really thriving nightlife. and it's changed completely. It's changed completely in a very short amount of time. So I see the small independent businesses that were there that are gone. You know, where are those? Where are those people that have those businesses? Why have they gone? What has caused that problem? I mean, I can't turn around and say it's completely Lisa Nandy's fault because she hasn't been in government for the last 14 years. The Labour Party hasn't been in government, but they certainly, as the opposition, haven't argued our case and haven't argued for anything that the people of Wigan want. And it's so sad to see the town that you love so much. You know, the town that, like you said, the town that had Wigan rugby where everyone came to and it was somewhere to be proud of. It just feels as if it's just disintegrating in front of our eyes. You see, I've been lobbying for years, but for justice, and I've never given anybody any money, and no one's ever given me any money. I think if something's right and something should be put out there, you don't need money, do you? You know, if someone came to me and said, right, if I became an MP, and it is a long shot. I do understand that it is a long shot, but if that happened, there isn't any amount of money in the world that could convince me to lobby for something and to do something that is not a principle in my heart, really. So if someone came to me and said, you know what, stop talking about the NHS, I'm a private health company, let's do X, Y, Z. No, stick it, seriously. I've always felt that if you have principles and this is what you believe in, then there is nothing that can stop me. Unless someone tells me I'm completely wrong and shows me an alternative way that is far better. And even then, you know, there's no need to give gifts or presents for someone to make something happen. I think an MP's job is to have the autonomy to, you know, be trusted, but to be not to be coerced or coaxed into doing something that their constituents perhaps wouldn't like them to do. I think an MP should do. I think an MP, their boss is the people of the town that they represent. Nobody else. Your boss is the people that you represent. Our main aims. We've had two private members' bills that have been trying to get through Parliament. And this is why I know it's very difficult and very tricky because nobody likes touching something that's a little bit controversial. And we've been making some great headway, but obviously now everything's dead. Every private member's bill has fallen. So it's a case of starting again. But we're making a lot of progress. I think it's become quite obvious that it's wrong to put people in prison for crimes that they haven't committed. So, you know, that is logical and people are starting to understand that is what the campaign is about. It's not about not letting murderers free. It's about not letting innocent people be labelled as murderers. But it's been a very difficult one. But it's about getting the life sentence for children, getting it abolished. We shouldn't be putting children in prison for life that haven't actually committed a crime. And I think the next government, whichever one it is, whether I'm elected or not, you know, that's going to be high on my agenda regardless. You know, continuing to fight for justice because like the post office scandal, like every justice scandal, Hillsborough, whatever, you name it, Orgreave, no government of the day ever does anything to rectify these injustices for at the very least 25 years. And I'm almost 20 years into this one. So I do understand that the fight will continue and it will take a number of years because real justice is never gained unless you fight for 2 decades at least. It's massive. It's the reason why our prisons are bursting at the seams, why they are massively overcrowded. Yes, because people in multiples of 10 for every crime that is committed are being put to prison, and if it's a murder or a manslaughter, for very, very long sentences. So there is no releasing these people. So they're piling up massively, and that's been happening for the last 20, 30 years. And we've got to the point that because joint enterprise is so popular and such an easy way to convict people, it is the one reason why our prisons are bursting at the seams, and they will get worse because of it. You can't double a prison population in such a short period of time unless there is something legal that is going wrong. Because we're not a nation of homicidal murderers. We're not, and yet we've got something like 20% of life sentence murder. I think the whole of Europe combined has got far less people convicted of murder than England and Wales. So we're tiny. This tiny island has got far more convicted murderers than the rest of Europe combined, and that itself doesn't make sense, does it? So when you look at the figures and the stats and you look at other countries, you can see what the problem is. But we've never had a government that will acknowledge that. Instead, they try to call it the revolving door of prison. There is no exit. That's the reason why the prisons are so full, because people are doing 20 and 30 years and there is no exit. It's like the bodies are being piled up in there and nobody's acknowledging the reason behind it. Just put a cross on an independent. That's all it is. Register to vote, and if you're not going to vote, if you're going to waste your vote, waste it on an independent. Seriously, if all this general election does, if all it can do is rackle the cages of Westminster, so that they know the people of this country really have had enough. Not had enough on Twitter or social media, but really have had enough, and we really will become a collective, and we really will do something about it. So don't waste your vote. Never waste your vote. And if you want to ruin your vote, ruin it with an independent. Just don't give it to the Conservatives or the Labour Party right now, because both those parties need to be told that right now we don't feel like we live in a democracy. So it's, everyone's arguing, is it the blue pill or the red pill? Well, let's go for the green one or the independent one and just show them that, we want a democracy. We don't want two sides of the same coin.